Underneath it says, "Here men from the planet Earth first set foot upon the moon, July 1969 AD. We came in peace."
Apollo 11, their mission was to actually land on the moon and walk. And so it was this pivotal project by NASA where we were trying to push humans further and further into space to actually land on the moon, which was something we all think about. We see the moon every day, and this was a plan to actually put a person on the moon.
4, 3, 2, 1. And liftoff of OSIRIS-REx, its 7-year mission to boldly go to the asteroid Bennu and back.
People too in Ohio, Dayton especially, were very excited about the space program. We had John Glenn, who was from, I believe it was Cambridge, Ohio, in the Mercury program, and then somebody from the Miami Valley, and Neil Armstrong from Wapakoneta, that actually gets selected for the Apollo program and is picked to be on Apollo 11. So then you have that tie-in too, where here's somebody that's one of us from the Miami Valley that is going to go to space and go to the moon.
The archives here at Wright State received the Combs Award from the National Aviation Hall of Fame. And this was an award that recognized our contribution to the 100th anniversary of flight and preserving that history and making it available. We traveled to Las Vegas to accept that award at the National Business Aviation Association annual conference. There were thousands of people in this huge auditorium, and I went up on stage to accept the award on behalf of the archives here at Wright State. And Neil Armstrong was the one who handed me the award. And so that was another occasion that I was able to be close to someone of that notoriety.
It makes it easier to shoot too. It's neat. Each space mission, all the way from Mercury all the way up until today, each mission has a specific patch that has ties to the mission itself. And we were very fortunate a couple years ago where a gentleman donated, he'd been collecting the space shuttle patches. And so we have all of the space shuttle patches from the 80s and 90s here in our collection. And people think of archives as places where we might have things like photographs and paper letters, but we also have objects like space patches and so on.
Early in 2002, we were approached by an astronaut from NASA. His name is Jerry Ross, and he was scheduled to go up on the space shuttle Atlantis in April of 2002. He is a distant relation of Wilbur and Orville Wright. And he asked us if he could take something that would represent the Wright brothers collection here at Wright State, if he could take something with him that would be meaningful. I thought about this for a long time, trying to figure out what would be a good item to send. And I settled on an original print of the first powered flight. I thought, this would be wonderful to send an original photograph taken by the Wright brothers of their first powered flight, December 17th, 1903. Send it up on the space shuttle to fly around the Earth.
Yeah, so we have the papers of Paul Webb, who was a doctor and a scientist that was trying to develop what they called the space activity suit. And this was a suit, when we think of the astronaut spacesuits, we think of the big, bulky white suits that they wear today, and he was trying to come up with a lighter, thinner suit that gave them a lot more mobility. And so in the 60s and 70s, he worked at Wright-Patt and then through a private business trying to design these space activity suits that would allow astronauts to be able to work easier in space and move easier in space. And if you think about science fiction movies, I don't know if you've seen the latest Avengers movie, but there's a scene when they're all walking to go into space in those very light suits. And that's what I think he envisioned the space activity suit to be, would just be a helmet and this very thin suit that gave you much more mobility. And so we have probably about, I think, a dozen mock-ups of suits here. They're not full-size suits, but these were mock-ups that he created to test the technology, the different types of cloth and zippers.
Neil Armstrong was here in the library. We had a special reception out here on the 4th floor of the library to welcome all of our guests. And I remember I was in the reading room and offering tours and sneak peeks or behind the scenes tours to individuals. And Neil walked up to the entrance of the archives and I invited him in. And he came in and he looked around a little bit And my memory of him, he was very quiet, very unassuming. You wouldn't have thought that he was this great American hero. He was more interested in learning about the Wright brothers than talking about space. Neil Armstrong was so enamored with the Wright brothers. He understood their contribution to aviation. He understood that without them, he would not have been able to do what he did. And he gave them all the credit.
Okay. At the foot of the ladder, the lamb footbeds are only depressed in the surface about 1 or 2 inches, although the surface appears to be very, very...
Brought to you by the Wright State University Friends of the Libraries.